Last class, we have seen the Spring ORM, right? Any doubt, any questions so far, Nikhil, Sana, whatever we have discussed?
ORM is good, sir, actually.
Okay.
I'll practice more on that and
Yeah,
I'll get
please.
back again, sir. Yeah.
You have to. Okay, Sana, any doubt from your side?
No, for the moment, no.
Okay, cool. So today class, we're gonna learn the MVC. What is that? Model View Controller. So this
Okay.
is what we're gonna learn today. Let me show you first what is Model View Controller. Model it stands for data. So it's stands for data. View is nothing but it is HTML, JSP, all these things. So your view is JSP basically,
Okay.
and C is stands for controller, which is nothing but your servlet. So while discussing about the dynamic web project, you remember we have created a couple of servlet program, right? Login servlet,
Correct.
all these things. So here controller stands for servlet. And why we were having the servlet in our application? Because whenever client making a request, there should be one servlet for processing that request and sending the response back. Yeah.
Right.
So model is a data, view is JSP, and servlet is nothing but who is processing that request. Whenever you are getting a client request, either it could be a get call or a post call or a put and delete in the world of REST. But in high level, in a web application, either it's a get or post. Whenever it is a
Correct.
get, the backend servlet have to fetch the data from database, and then after he have to send that data to the JSP where the data is going to be visual. If it is a post call, then this JSP itself is capturing the data which you are looking for, which need to be passed to the server, and then after you're getting a final response. So as a part of web application, definitely I told you client and server is the major one, and request and response is the two major functionality which we are going to achieve under web application. So
Yeah.
whatever module we have seen so far, like Spring IOC, Spring DAO, Spring ORM, these all are only for core Java project kinds of things. So there we don't need any web server like Tomcat and all. But Spring is not made only for this, core Java project, because everywhere there is a web application, and everybody should know the web application. Everybody should have to develop the web application, right? That's the reason Spring has introduced the very powerful modules called Spring MVC. So from here, we are going to develop the web application. What is web application? I already discussed. So now we will
Yeah.
see the same logins are laid, kinds of example, how we can achieve in our Spring MVC. Is Spring MVC is required now this day? Answer is no, because we have a Spring Boot for doing the all stuff which a Spring MVC is supposed to do. But Spring Boot is doing lots of things in background. And what are the things it's doing in background? You will be getting lots of information in this Spring MVC. One very, very important point is Spring MVC infrastructure setup. How the flow of Spring MVC is there. If you don't understand properly, then Spring Boot will be not very useful for you. So I will tell you an interesting thing. Like Shana has registered for a Spring Boot directly, you know, and she started learning Spring Boot. While discussing in the class, I was pretty sure she were getting the concepts what I'm teaching her. But later, when she were going for practice, most of the things were very confusing for her. What is auto wiring? Suddenly, she becomes confused. How the bean is going to be created? She gonna be confused. All these things
Correct.
she found no. I supposed to start a Spring from scratch, And that's the reason C has again registered for the whole course along with the Spring Boot. And now I'm
Yeah.
100% sure C will be getting 100 out of 100 from the Spring Boot course and all. And of course, you guys also, because from scratch, I have started teaching you the framework like a Spring and all the related concepts. So hoping things will be fine in our journey. So now,
Yes.
in this example, we are going to see a very simple Spring MVC web application where we see just a hello world of MVC. But just setting up a hello world of MVC, I will show you how complex it is, how difficult it is, you know. So that's where you will understand the pain of a developer or pain for any organization to setting up the Spring MVC project. There is a lots
Yeah.
of boilerplate code you have to do, lots of configuration you have to do with the help of XML, whereas now this day we are not using XML. So all these things I'm gonna teach you now. Okay, let's go ahead.
Okay.
So just like a core Java project, you know, I have created one Maven project, which is a web application. So what you have to do in file, new, there is a Maven project. Then you have to go to next. And by default, we were selected the quick start. If you remember, we were not doing anything
Correct.
so far in the project. But now you have to type here web app. Can you see
Oh,
that? So this time you have to select the web app, not the core Java or quick start. And rest all things will be fine after giving the project name and all. It will be generating a project like how? Like this project. So look at the structure here. We have a Hello MVC project created just like the same way. We have a pom.xml file, and under SRC, you're not only going to see the main Java and test, you are also going to see the one
web app.
additional folder called web app. So this is the additional folder Spring MVC is required. In fact, each web application is required, and that's the reason Maven has created this. Our all project starts with the discussion from form.xml file, because you know that whenever you are using a different modules of a Spring, then we have to introduce a different dependencies also. So like Spring IOC, we have introduced Spring IOC and Spring context, right? Similarly,
Correct.
for Spring DAO, we have added Spring DAO. For ORM, we have added Spring ORM. Now, like that way, for Spring MVC also, we need couple of dependencies. And what are those dependencies? Let's see under the form.xml file. First and most important things, you must have to see Spring Core is always there. I told you the IOC is a core module of Spring framework. So in any kinds of project, Spring Core supposed to be there. Spring Context.
Yeah.
So Spring Context is also a part of that, but on the top of that, we have added now two more dependency. One is Spring Wave, and second is Spring Wave MVC. So these two are required when you are dealing with the Spring MVC projects. So remember, it's pretty simple, straightforward. Add the two dependencies from the Maven repository for Spring Wave and Spring MVC. How can we get directly this? You just go into the
Yeah.
Google
Memory repository.
and Maven repository, you know that, right? So you will just
Right.
type
Right.
here Spring Wave Maven. So if you type here something like this, then automatically a Spring framework related repository it will open, and here is the different versions. You just select like this. Again, if you go Spring framework, you will also see a Spring Wave MVC somewhere. Yeah, Here it is. So you just need to click
Correct.
on this as well and select the versions. You will be getting the Spring Wave MVC. The same thing I also did for my Spring Hello World examples, added the
Correct.
two additional Wave and Wave MVC. Getting?
Yeah.
So
So
now,
once we
yeah,
yeah.
please
Yeah.
go ahead,
So once
Nikhil.
we select the web app
Huh?
while creating the Maven project, so won't
Huh?
that be available automatically, or
These
we have to
these dependencies you mean?
dependence? Yeah.
Actually, Eclipse is one of the open source, So there
Okay.
is something called My Eclipse. So that is a paid one.
Okay.
So they will give you the option, and in fact, there is one more ID called STS
The
Spring
Spring Tools
Tools.
suite.
Yes,
Correct.
that is giving you a direct option to create a Spring MVC project.
Right.
So if you get
Correct.
that Spring MVC project directly created, then this dependency will be automatically added.
Correct.
But
Correct.
it is not a Spring tool suite. If you want to work on that, please work. But I never preferred that Spring tool suite. The reason is it's quite taking lots of resources. It's a very heavy software. Lots of memory is
Okay.
required. It is hanging
Oh,
frequently. But if you have a good configuration, if you are using, I think you are using a Mac laptop, so you can try for the Spring tool suite there. There, like in file, you will directly get the option of Spring MVC, Spring
Spring.
IOC, all this project creation. And if you follow
Oh,
that
nice.
instruction, directly you will get this all dependencies added. In fact, in the IntelliJ also, if you are using the paid version, then there is your option where you can directly create a Spring MVC project. Make sense?
Okay. Yes, sir.
There you will directly get this all dependency automatically added without going to the manually to the Maven repository. But everything is having the pros and cons. If I directly
Correct.
show you that project, then maybe all dependency your IDE will not bring. Sometimes you have to go manually to the Spring,
Ah,
I mean
Maven
Maven
repository.
repository and copy the dependency. Sometimes they will come up with the versions also. So that ID is having their predefined versions, and you want to work on the higher version, then again you have to change the all these things. So idea is this is the way by which you can learn better, but that is on the top of that. If you know this, then you can easily work on that. But if you directly work on
Correct.
that, and if you don't know how to bring the dependency in your pom.xml file, it's quite difficult. Got it?
Correct. Yes, sir.
Shana, getting
Yes, yes, it's clear. Yes.
cool. So as a part of web application, I told you we were dealing with the HTTP servlet request and HTTP servlet response. And these two libraries is not a part of Spring, not a part of Java. This is a part of one another library called Java X Servlet.api. But the beauty of this API is it is coming with each web server. For example, if you are using the Tomcat, this plugin, this jar is already sitting there. If you want to see that, then let me show you. If I go to my software folder and under software, this is my Apache Tomcat. Under Apache Tomcat, if I open the library folder, you will be able to see servlet-api. You know, so this is the another library which definitely required for any web application. Doesn't matter it is a pure Java based web application or it's a Spring web application. So everyone need this servlet-api. So one way is that you can copy this jar and put it into your lib folder. But the best way is that why don't you define a dependency for this as well, so that you don't need to bother about from where this jar is coming from. And dependency related to JUnit is already coming by default with each Maven project. That's the reason it is sitting here. Okay, rest all
Yes.
are nothing. Just three dependency we have added. Among them, one is optional. If you don't want to put, no problem. Well, now let's see what else we have to do as a part of Spring MVC. This step we have already did for many of our project as well. Now, a Spring MVC is using the XML based configuration. So for dealing with a Spring MVC, you have to create two XML file. One XML file will come automatically while creating a web application via Maven, and that XML file name is a web.xml file. Under this
Okay.
web.xml file, as per the Spring documentation, you have to write some boilerplate code, which is just for formalities. We are not going to use this particular configuration anyway in our core business development. But Spring is saying, hey buddy, you have to register one servlet and their servlet name is dispatcher servlet. So how to get this complete configuration of dispatcher servlet? Very simple. If you go to the Spring documentation and if you look for a Spring MVC, so I'm just typing here Spring MVC documentation. So if I click on this Spring documentation, Wave MVC, this guy will clearly show you that in your wave.xml file, you have to register the dispatcher servlet. So look at this. This is what they are talking. And I did nothing. I just copied from here and pasted into my wave.xml file. So this is
Okay.
the second things you have to do as a part of Spring MVC setup. Okay, this servlet
Okay.
is a dispatcher servlet. It is also known as front controller. I will be talking about this controller in a while, quite in more details. But right now, you just see how the infrastructure for a Spring MVC is going to be set up. Later, we will see why and what. Okay. After this, you also have to create one more XML file, and that XML file name should be same whatever you have given the name here. If you given servlet name here is Spring, then it should start with spring-servlet.xml. And same servlet name you have to put here also. So remember, whatever name is here, if here is a ABC, then you have to put abc-servlet.xml. So this is the recommendation and also the naming conventions for a Spring MVC. Now, what else we have under this Spring Servlet.xml? This guy is having the full of a schema, and also you have to put this two configuration. One is for annotation based and second is for component scanning. What is this two doing? Let's understand a bit. Spring MVC also started coming with the help of annotation, but their configuration is still sitting into their XML file. So XML file is there, but further we don't need much configuration because we are in the world of annotation. So Spring MVC wanted to know that, hey buddy, are you using annotation related configuration? If you are saying yes, then this is the line you have to put inside your another XML file. This is clearly just activating the annotation related configuration for Spring MVC. So one line which is annotation config for that. Whenever you are using annotation, then idea is to search the controller where exactly the servlet is sitting. So for searching the servlet, you have to put another configuration which is saying component hyphen scan. Okay, so you are saying my base package is com.nic.controller. My all controller will be sitting in this package. So this is the two information are there. Let me comment it out this part. Later I will tell you why I have added this bean. So simple in the wave.xml, we have to register the dispatcher servlet, and in another XML file, just two configuration is required. One is for annotation based configuration and second is to inform Spring where is my controller. Okay, so these two configuration if you are done, then let's move ahead and create one controller. Let's come to the Java part. under the com.nic.controller, I have just created one controller. Now, what is this controller? As I told you, it's just like your servlet. But servlet required lots of things to be here. HTTP servlet, blah, blah, blah. But here, you just need to do one thing on the top of your each controller. That is nothing but one annotation called at the rate of controller. You remember the Spring IOC. Whichever file we are having the configurations, like whichever file we are creating the beans and alls, on the top of that class we were putting is at the rate of configuration. Similarly, in the world of Spring MVC, whichever file is a controller, that file, that class should must have at the rate of controller on the top of that class. So this is the first things you have to do under controller. After that, it is a typical flow, guys, how servlet program is. URL pattern and the response preparation. So here we have at the rate of request mapping. Rather than at the rate of web servlet, let me again show you that example which we have seen. So on the top of your each class, there was at the rate of web servlet. You remember this?
Yes.
Each servlet class. Similarly, at the rate of web servlet is replaced by here at the rate of request mapping, and request mapping is still there. Even in the world of Spring Boot, we are using this request mapping. This request mapping is simply telling you that, hey, I'm responsible to process the request when it is coming /hello. What is the method type, which is a get? Again, here by default method is get, whether you are keeping or not. Well, now this is the method which is going to process the request which is coming for /hello. It is just printing I'm from controller and modal and view object creation. So if you know that in MVC, just now I talked about, it is like a model is a data, view is nothing but your GSP, and controller is nothing but your servlet. So controller is already there. So we have to create model and view object. While creating a model and view object, which is a part of your Spring library, you can pass the view name. You remember the success.jsp, success.html we were creating in the
Yeah.
login
Yeah.
servlet. Here, you just need to pass your final home page or whatever page is going to show the result like this. We can pass the data also. Let's say in the case of get employee, we need to pass the all employee list from the database. But here I'm simply passing only one data, which is a string data saying welcome Spring MVC, and this is the key. So under model and view, there is a method called add object. Here you can add n number of objects. Whatever you want, you can add. But here I'm just simply printing the key as a key itself and value as a welcome to Spring MVC. And finally, I'm returning the model and view object. So this is how the controller looks like. The beauty of Spring MVC controller is, you remember in the world of servlet, for each URL pattern, you have to keep on adding the different servlet. For login, there is a separate login servlet. For registration, there is a registration servlet. For hello, there is a hello servlet. Here, you should not allow to do keep on creating the different controller, rather than you keep on defining the method something like this. So for example, I want to define another URL pattern for welcome. Very simple. In the same controller, you can do that. I will show you in some time. But here, guys, this is the very simple method where class is having at the rate of controller, method is having at the rate of request mapping. Which method is responsible for what doing? It's decided by the client, what URL they are hitting. Okay, and this is how your business logic is. This business logic can be very complex, like it's going to the database, fetching the data. You can introduce a Spring ORM here to bring the data from the table, because last class we have already discussed about it, and then send the data, and which data, that data will be displayed over the hello.jsp. So without any delay, let me run the hello world example. So first time, what you need to do is right click, run as Maven clean. So the first things you have to do with the Maven project is cleaning process. Then after, you have to right click, run as Maven install. So this is the another step you have to do. If it is a first time, it will be start downloading the all required jars and all. And at the end, it will create a war file. That war file is sitting under this target folder, which is hello mvc.war. Now run the index.jsp. Under this index.jsp, you will notice I am having the hello. It means the moment I will click on this hello, it will be a start like servlet, start looking for the controller. Basically, it's a start looking for servlet, just like a web application, which I have teach you in the servlet example. The moment you click the URL pattern, immediately server is coming and checking where is the servlet which is having this hello URL pattern. If it is not found, it will give you 404. If it is found, then that particular servlet is processing your request and giving the response back. So here also the same flow. Hello, the moment you will hit the hello, it will start looking for a controller, which controller is having a request mapping with hello, and immediately it will come to know, okay, this is the controller. Then it will process your request and give you the response back. Hello.jsp I have already created, which is here. What this guy is doing, it is simply printing your key value. So whatever key you have passed from hello controller, that is key, and you are just printing that key here. It will display the value which you are sending from the controller. There is a two way to print this value. One way is the very simple dollar and whatever key you are passing. Second way is that print like this. So both is the way. Whatever you found, you can go, but this is the best way by which you can proceed. Okay. So let's run this index.jsp. Run on server. Let me restart the server. And I'm hoping index.jsp is supposed to be available for me for making a call to my hello controller. Timer has been started, so you guys can rejoin after the disconnection. Cool. So here we are having click here. The moment I will click on, click here, what will be? It is directly hitting the hello URL. You know that flow, and that is the reason I always recommend to go with at least one example of fundamental of web application understanding. So whoever is knowing the servlet program properly, they can easily understand. Now here hello is same, the only servlet has changed to the controller. So the moment I will click here, it will be going to the hello controller. Why it is going to the hello controller? Because in this configuration file, you already had informed that start scanning the package com.nic.controller. So there might be many controller. Yes, let's say your server went first to the login controller. It will first question, it will ask, do you have at the rate of controller?
Yeah.
Yes, I have. Then it will ask, do you have request mapping with log hello? This guy will tell, no, I'm sorry, I'm / login. Then it will skip this controller and it will be going to the another controller. Do you have controller? This guy will say, yes, I have. Do you have request mapping with / hello? It will say, yes, I have. Then you are my server. Please process this request. This is how it's gonna be happen. You might be having the n number of servlet, but each servlet should have a unique URL pattern. I told you. Similarly, here also, you can have n number of controller, but each controller should have unique URL pattern, that is request mapping. The values should be unique for each method. So now go here and click here. Congratulations. Look at this. I am from controller. This is the first things your hello controller is doing. I am from controller. Then after it is creating a model and view object and sending the data key value. So whatever key you have sent, it is going to the hello.jsp, and hello.jsp is printing that key here, and the result is you are able to see the welcome to Spring MVC output. This is the typical flow of Spring MVC. Understood?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Don't worry, this is required only for your knowledge. It's not required now this day, but you, who knows, you might be got a job in a company which is still using the Spring MVC. So you have to be very clever and you have to understand the Spring MVC there. But with this confirmation, I'm pretty sure if you understand this small hello world programming, the bigger application is also in the same way. Anyway,
Okay.
let's try understanding this once again from scratch. So if you look at the Spring MVC architecture, because if you mention inside your resume saying that I know Spring MVC, then interviewer will be start asking the first question to you, can you explain me the architecture of Spring MVC?
Mm.
So what is that architecture? Let's understand this. All incoming request is coming to the front controller. And what is the front controller? The first servlet which you have registered inside your wave.xml file, dispatcher servlet. Dispatcher servlet is your front controller. Whatever request is coming to this application, hello MVC, that all are coming first to this guy, this particular servlet. How? Because here in the URL pattern, I have just kept slash. So if you put just slash, it means what? You are saying each request is having slash. Look at the request mapping. This is also having slash. This is also having slash. So this guy is saying whatever request is coming, that all are having slash. So first it should come to me. So this front controller is a gatekeeper. It is a security guard. It is saying, hold on, you have a slash hello, but hold on, let me check that what you looking for. I will guide you how to reach the hello controller, but first you come to me. So if you look at their architecture, it is saying all incoming request is coming to the front controller. After that, what front controller is doing? Front controller is saying, hey, I verified whatever I supposed to do. I'm sending you into another XML file. Please go there and look for the further configuration. Server is saying, okay, fine. Let me go here. Oh, you are using annotation. Okay, then fine. Let me know where is your controller sitting. I'm saying my controller is sitting into com.nic.controller. Your request, your server will be Tomcat server is coming to this controller package and it will be start scanning all the controllers. So look at this now again. Here, front controller is delegating your request to the actual controller which is serving your request. And this controller is nothing but your hello controller. Handling the request, creating the model object. Now come to the hello controller.java. What this guy is doing, it is first and most important things, it is creating a model and view object. So if you look at this
Right.
diagram again, this guy is creating a model object, right? And again,
Yes.
it is sending the response back to the front controller. So your controller is saying, I have created the model and view object, view is already attached with that, This is the data I'm sending to you. Go back to the dispatcher servlet. Again, your dispatcher servlet, your fund controller is going, okay, fine. I know how to render the data over the JSP, that is my view template. So the moment it is coming to hello.jsp, hello.jsp is going to display your data, and hello.jsp is already a view. So your controller again saying, now result is ready. I have rendered the model under the view back to the client, and he's got the response. So as a client, you start getting the response how you have seen just now.
Okay.
So you need to relate this small example with this architecture. So this architecture is completely for understanding the any hello MVC typical flow. Got it,
Okay.
guys?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So what are the things you found here? We found that first is we have to add a XML based configuration. It's not so complex now this day because of annotation, but trust me, when it was not this annotation based, this particular configuration file we are having the lots of complex configuration. In fact, if you start adding the security logging, all these things, this will be start getting dirty. Lots of extra configuration we have to add as a part of our infrastructure. In any real-time project, this is not just a two configuration rather than lots of things. For example, I will show you one small configuration how it is start making this project complex. Let's run the index.jsp again. Now, whenever you are going to the any application, in 1 minute it will be disconnected, guys. So please join again.
Okay.
So in any application, there is a login process. Let's take example of Facebook itself. Once it is taking your username and password, then it is bringing the home page where your complete profile is displayed, like your timeline, all these things. So think about, I know that